my 67th birthday, I decided to spend a few days riding Griffin Bike Park just south of Terre Haute, Indiana. Was that a good idea? Yes. Here's why. First, you need to understand that my wife and I quit exchanging gifts at the end of the 80s. Instead, we spend the money to go somewhere. Maybe for a day, maybe for a week, or two. We value experiences over possessions, so for birthdays and anniversaries we go somewhere and do something. I'll throw in some pictures of my recent birthdays at the end of this video, but the subject of this video was my 67th birthday on November 12th, 2020. You also need to understand that where we live in southeastern Indiana is awash with recreational opportunities. Griffin Bike Park is a 3-hour drive for us. It's an easy drive, but within roughly that same travel time, there's a ton of other places to go mountain bike, as shown on this map. Our home in Madison is the black arrow, Griffin Bike Park is the blue arrow. The registry isn't great, and it depends on how you count the trails, but there are scores of destinations in that circle offering several hundred miles of mountain bike trails. And this doesn't include hiking and kayaking and all the other things we enjoy. I'd heard good things about Griffin, but not a lot. Most of the guys I ride with head south or east when traveling to ride. I knew a few who had ridden Griffin. Yes, they spoke well of it, but they emphasized the park aspect of the facility, especially the jumps. I like trails. I'm not really a park kind of rider, and I'm certainly no jumper, so Griffin stayed low on my attention scale until this trip. I chose Griffin because it's west-northwest of our home in Madison, and pretty much every other direction had rain in the forecast. Terre Haute would get a few showers just before we arrived, but would otherwise have glorious Midwestern autumn weather. So here's the rundown. Griffin has a bike park, and I did spend a bit of time on some of the features. But Griffin also has miles of well-designed, well-built, and well-maintained trails, which is where I spent most of my time. There's lots of intermediate trails, including, in my mind, those they rate as beginner trails. They may be suitable for a beginner on the cusp of intermediate, but I would not take a first-timer to Griffin. There are fall line trails. There are connectors on old haul roads from when the area was a coal mine. Mostly, these were included for convenience. Riders were using them before the park was formally developed, and they got grandfathered into the design for better or worse. But the vast majority of the 16 miles of trails are demanding, exciting, and innovative, while also conforming to current trail engineering standards. Signage is good. Expert trails had qualifiers at the start. On top of that, the trails are simply beautiful. Despite the excellence of the riding experience, the most appealing part to me about Griffin Bike Park is its philosophical foundation. The park is named in honor of Dale R. Griffin, who grew up in Terre Haute and was an active member of the community. Dale became a sergeant in the U.S. Army and gave his life on October 27, 2009, while serving in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. Dale's brothers, Clint and Blake, and their parents, Jean and Donna, built this facility in honor of Dale. To quote from their website, "The Griffin Bike Park project was founded in celebration of the core values of freedom, family, friendship, and community, and to the memories of the servicemen and women who have served and who gave their lives to protect these values for us all." When you ride the Freedom Trail or the Warrior Trail, you are flanked by placards with the names and faces of fallen heroes. It is intensely moving and meaningful, especially at this time when traditional values are being threatened and disparaged. I met Blake as I was riding the K-Bar Trail and talked with him for some time. He said others in the organization were more involved in such managerial tasks as promotion, race organizing, and fundraising. He said, "Mostly, I'm just a digger." Well, maybe he's just a digger, but I rode what he built, and honestly, I'd say he's an artist. By the way, I got home with less usable footage than I had hoped. Yes, again. Griffin trails had peculiarities that made my normal camera setup not work well. I share that information with my behind-the-scenes supporters on Patreon. That link and others are in the description. Cameras weren't the only issue. My dropper posts stopped dropping. That made the technical sections more difficult than they should have been, but I'd ridden without a dropper for 60 years before I got my first one. Riding without the benefit of a dropper remains familiar to me, so this was more of a petty inconvenience than a real disruption. Have you ridden Griffin? What were your impressions? Put them in the comments below. And I'm curious, are you more about trails or parks or a mix of both? Share that in the comments too if you would. Other notes from the trip? On the way to Terre Haute, we had a great lunch at the Pioneer Cafe in Bowling Green, Indiana. It's just a tiny place plopped down in the middle of a tiny town, but it was full of hunters and farmers, which is usually a good sign. We drove past Bowling Green on the way home to eat at McCormick's Creek State Park. Like nearly every meal we've eaten at a state park in Indiana, it was adequate, but no more than that. The excellent service, the scenery, and the historicity of being in Indiana's first state park made the meal enjoyable despite the unimpressive food. We ate a couple times at Cracker Barrel out of convenience mostly. It was fine. I'm not a fan of Cracker Barrel. They seem to be committed to serving food at room temperature. But the 2 meals I had on this trip were okay. We also ate at Monocle's Pizza in South Terre Haute, and that was very good. We stayed at the Pear Tree Inn at I-70 and State Road 41. It's a part of the Drury Hotel system. It was a typical corporate hotel room. Nothing special. The reason I've preferred Drury hotels in the past was that they had the best complimentary breakfast of any hotel. This time, claiming COVID concerns, we were required to go to the front desk where they doled out the kind of basic breakfast items you would get at a budget motel. But the place was convenient to all the commerce of South Terre Haute and just 15 minutes from Griffin, plus our rate was half what I'd expect to pay before COVID killed the travel industry. This wasn't a gustatory junket, nor was it a mission to luxuriate in hotel hot tubs. It was a chance to celebrate the beginning of my 67th year on this earth by doing one of my favorite things, mountain biking. As it turned out, I got to do that in one of my favorite places. I didn't know that would be true before I made this first trip to Griffin Bike Park, but I know it now. It is indeed one of my favorite places, and I'm eager to go back. I'm Rich Reese, and I'll see you out there.